Hi, good evening. I hope you had a great weekend. Today evening, I'll be doing what I've been wanting to do for a long time now at Giri's Adda, which is a book review. For those who have followed the stuff that has happened on the Adda, there have been some book reviews, in fact, only two of them in the beginning. And the Adda is as much about books as it is about music and conversations. The two books, of course, two wonderful books which I talked about. One is called The Universe in an Atom, written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And the other one, the second one, was a very, very moving book called Tuesdays with Mori. And I talked about both these books. I've been wanting to do a lot of book reviews. In fact, one of the plans this year in 2021 is to invite friends who can talk about books and set up nice conversations about very, very interesting books. All genres, all subjects, all domains. There's no restriction on that. Books that interest us, excite us, and so on. So today I'll be talking about a very, very delightful small book. And before I get there, a few words about small books. Uh, you will recall that in the earlier book reviews, I did mention a little about my fascination for small books. And when I say small, they're not just, I mean, of course, they're physically small because I'm talking about books that are very short, probably like a big essay, 70, 80 pages, 100 pages, thereabouts. Sometimes these small books can be very profound, very powerful, in fact, and they can influence a large number of people. And the book that I have chosen today is a very, very delightfully small book. I'll come to it in a minute, but then more on, a few more statements on small books with some examples. So let me start off. Talk about The Little Prince. And I had a bit of a difficult time pronouncing the author's name, but do check out The Little Prince on the web and get your copy. The author is Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It's not pronounced that way in English. But then this is a delightful book which you will savor for many, many years. And I would request you to check this out. Remember Ernest Hemingway, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, the Nobel Prize, in fact, winner for literature in 1954, The Old Man and the Sea. Do check this book out. Small book, but very profound and very accessible, very well written. Hermann Hesse, 87 pages, winner of the 1946 Nobel Prize for Literature. What a book Siddhartha is. It's based on Gautama Buddha, and it's very beautifully, evocatively written. It's actually, at the end of it, you learn about the Buddha in so many different ways, and you begin to appreciate him as a personality. You begin to reflect on what the Buddha has said. Closer Home, Hind Swaraj, 1909 by Mahatma Gandhi. It was initially banned as a seditious text by the Britishers. Hind Swaraj talks about home rule, and it's a masterful narrative articulation of Gandhi's beliefs about home rule and what it meant and how he used that as a political weapon in his fight for India's freedom. Uh, Annihilation of Caste by B.R. Ambedkar, Dr. Ambedkar. This was initially meant to be delivered as a speech in Lahore in 1935 at a forum which was an anti-caste forum, but then they found that particular speech to be too hot to handle and it was strongly worded. So Ambedkar was not allowed to deliver that speech. The event was cancelled. But then he published that book in 1936. It's undergone several uh, iterations after that. The most recent being a book called as The Doctor and the Saint, in which Arundhati Roy talks about Ambedkar and Gandhi and compares the two. And, you know, that's a different book altogether. I'll be talking about it at some stage. Who Moved My Cheese? I mean, these are all random examples of books that, of small books, which have sold millions of copies, which are simple to read, yet packed with powerful insights. So, Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson sold millions of copies, 94 pages, published in 1998. It's all about how to deal with change. It's in the context of businesses, but then in very metaphorical ways, uh, through the tale of two mice, Spencer Johnson talks about how to look at change and how to manage it, negotiate change, deal with it. And change is all around us. It's something that we cannot run away with. Okay, so before I move on to this wonderful book, let me show you how it looks like. This is it. What a nice and interesting title. How to Fight is a slim, very slim book. It's about, I should say, how many? 120 pages? No, 115 pages, thereabouts. Thich Nhat Hanh. We've heard this name. In fact, for those of you who have tuned into our Mindful Saturdays sessions, I'm sure you have heard this name being mentioned by one or more of our three panelists, Indira, Ananya, and Harini, who I hope to invite again for more sessions on mindfulness in 2021. How to Fight has a foreword written by Shantam Seth, who is the founder of an organization, a not-for-profit organization called Ahimsa Trust. And Shantam is the founder of Ahimsa Trust. He is very well known in India and across the world for his work on helping people to cultivate mindfulness, which I have often referred to as the ancient practice. And he and his trust, they work very closely with educators, with people from different walks of life, including the police and security personnel, corporate leaders, politicians, and so on and so forth. And Shantam, Dharmacharya Shantam, as he is known, is also organizes a very interesting pilgrimage every year called as the footsteps in the footsteps of the Buddha. And this is a journey that takes participants along the paths that the Buddha himself traversed more than 2,600 years ago. So more on the Ahimsa Trust can be found on the web, and I would encourage you to get there. He has written the foreword, and rightly so, because he was ordained by this wonderful author, Thich Nhat Hanh. A little more about him in a few moments. He's also known as Thai. Thai pronounced as in Thailand, Thai. That's the short form that he's affectionately, given. So let me begin by a few words that Shantam says in the foreword to this very, very beautiful book, and we'll then get on to discussing the book itself a little. So Shantam begins his foreword by saying, and I'll read out from the book. Many years ago, after burning out from political activism, in my search for a spiritual teacher who could guide me on how to be peace rather than fight for peace. What a beautiful and profound sentence. I arrived at a retreat for artists at the Ojai Foundation in California. In the 5 days that Thich Nhat Hanh taught there, I felt for the first time that rather than merely having a concept or notion of peace, I truly experienced peace. Each day we walked in meditative awareness among the sage bushes in the foothills of the Los Padres mountain, ate meals in silence, contemplated existential questions, and learned how to live happily in the present moment. So, this seems to have been a transformative uh, experience. And Shantam goes on to say that Thai taught us to cultivate the energy of mindfulness, which would allow us, even in the most mundane of activities, to touch the miracle of life in the present moment. And for those of you who have tuned into our mindfulness conversations at Giri's Adda, uh, this has been the central theme, understanding mindfulness and its, and figuring out a way of cultivating it in everything that we do. And we've been touching upon different themes as we go along. And of course, as you would have probably guessed by now, this is a book that talks about cultivating mindfulness. But then the title is very interesting: How to Fight. This how to fight is basically, I mean, as you would have probably guessed by now, is a fight with oneself. It's not, a manual of fighting other people. I think the greatest of the battles are those that we, have with ourselves. And this, though it doesn't call itself a manual, I think it offers very, very rich insights, very, very rich prescriptions about how one can delve within, understand oneself, cultivate mindfulness, and live in joy. Little bit about the author. Thich Nhat Hanh, or Thai, is of course a very famous Vietnamese monk. All of 94 years, he is globally respected, revered around the world as a Buddhist scholar, a global spiritual uh, leader who has been very, very successful in creating access to just about anyone in this world to the ancient teachings of the Buddha over 2600 years ago. Thai is also a poet and peace activist, and his teachings on mindfulness are, of course, uh, pioneering. He's contributed much to the domains of global ethics and peace. And he was even nominated, or, Martin Luther King Jr. Also, in fact, at one point of time in the 60s, had suggested that he should get a Nobel Prize for Peace. So I'm not going to say much about Thai. There is so much that is available on the web. You can go and check it out. A little bit about this beautiful book, which I'm going to uh, talk for a few minutes. Such beautiful illustrations, and each of these pages has a meditation on it, invariably accompanied by a very beautiful uh, illustration, right? Let me read from some of these meditations. Now, what is very interesting is it is written in very accessible language, and that's what draws me to this book. It's not esoteric, it's not academic, it is not metaphysical, it is not abstract. Thai presents, like in fact the Dalai Lama did in fact in everything that the Dalai Lama has written, his books, they come across for their simplicity and beauty of articulation. Anybody can access it and benefit from that. So let me begin with one of the first meditations. It's called Opening the Door. Uh, and this is how it goes. Never in human history have we had so many means of communication: television, radio, telephone, fax, email, the internet, yet we remain islands with little real communication between us. Just let us pause and reflect on the statement, and we'll begin to realize how true it is. I continue. When we cannot communicate, we suffer and we spill our suffering onto other people. We can find ways to open the doors of communication again. Beautiful. Thai talks about the fight and where the fight begins, right? It's right up here in the beginning. And let me quote again. When someone says something unkind to you, you may want to retaliate right away. That is where the fight begins. This habitual way of reacting creates a well-worn pathway in your brain. When you travel a neural pathway over and over again, it becomes a habit. Very often, that pathway leads to anger, fear, or craving. 1 millisecond is enough for you to arrive at the same destination. Anger and a desire to punish the person who has dared to make you suffer. The mind and the brain are plastic in nature. You can change your mind, your brain, and the way you think and feel. With practice, you can create new neural pathways that lead to understanding, compassion, love, and forgiveness. Mindfulness and insight can intervene, redirecting you down a new pathway, a new neural pathway. Very beautiful. It's something that you can read again and again, and each time you read such a beautiful, articulation and such beautiful thoughts, you gain new insights. You come away with new insights. The next one, and this is something that we have discussed quite extensively in our Mindful Saturday sessions. It is titled A Pause. And I'm going to quote this again. Suppose someone just said something unpleasant to you. Their words and the sound of their voice give you an unpleasant feeling. Happens every day, isn't it? At work, at home, with friends, and so on. I quote again. You believe that they're trying to make you suffer. Of course, you feel the desire to react, to say something back. You feel that if you can express your anger, if you can make them suffer, you will get relief. Most of us react in that way. But mindfulness can help us pause for a moment and become aware of the anger building up in us. Stopping gives us a chance to acknowledge and to transform our anger. When we feel anger, irritation, or indignation arising in us, we pause. We stop and come back to our breathing straight away. We do not say or do anything when we are inhabited by this kind of energy, so we don't escalate the conflict. We wait until we are calm again. Being able to pause is the greatest gift. I repeat this statement. Being able to pause is the greatest gift. It gives us the opportunity to bring more love and compassion into the world rather than more anger and suffering. So I think in these two readings, very, very short readings, I hope I have communicated the essence of this book. It's all about mindfulness, understanding it, looking at its various dimensions, and beginning to do it based on this very, very deep and beautiful understanding of what it means. Each of these meditations has a beautiful title. For example, man is not our enemy. And under that he says, the roots of discrimination, conflict, and war are not to be found outside us. They're within our own way of thinking and looking at the world, and so on and so forth. There are meditations which are titled No Mud, No Lotus, Peace in Oneself, nowhere is too far away, untying knots in a relationship. I found this on page 63, a particularly beautiful, uh, set of reflections on how we get knotted up inside of ourselves and how these knots cause a lot of pain and suffering and misery if they are not unknotted or if they're not untied in due course of time. Uh, as we move towards the end of this book, there is something called as a peace treaty, which is basically a treaty that you sign with yourself. And this is how it reads: in order that we may live long and happily together, in order that we may continually develop and deepen our love and understanding, we, the undersigned, vow to observe and practice the following. And then, there are details. So this book is priced at 299 rupees. It's I mean, I'm repeating this ad nauseum. It's a delightfully small and beautiful book. It's a powerful book. It's a powerful meditation on what we can become if we pause, stop, and try and understand what's happening inside of us. And very aptly so, uh, the His Holiness the Dalai Lama has said something about this book. I'm going to read this before I conclude. Thich Nhat Hanh shows us the connection between personal inner peace and peace on earth. And I think those are the two dimensions that we must look at. Peace within ourselves is equal to peace on earth. And at Girizada, this is what we would be trying and doing. And to keep this, spirit going, uh, I have uh, planned a session on the 13th of February in which we will begin to look at things that matter to us, but we look out uh, for the first time and look at an issue that uh, should bother all of us, and we try and understand its various dimensions and see what we can all do about it. So we keep going within and without, and you're going to be meeting a number of interesting people this year who will come into the Adda and share their excitement, share their thoughts, share their knowledge, and enrich us all in that process. So keep tuning in to Giri's Adda for books, music, and conversations uh, for a better world, of course. Take care. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.